Let us continue with another correction. Most people imagine the future arrives through inventions, a breakthrough, a machine that changes everything overnight, a singular moment where society is forced to respond. That is not how this works. The real transformation comes through mechanisms, boring, incremental, plausible mechanisms, the kind that do not sound evil because they do not require evil. They require only a single principle: optimization. Optimization is the true engine of what comes next. It is the force that removes moral constraints without announcing that it has done so. It does not argue, it simply recalculates. This is Pillar 2. Automation is not the threat. Optimization is. Automation is a tool. It replaces tasks. Optimization is a regime. It replaces justifications. This matters because societies can survive automation. They have before. Machines replaced weavers. Tractors replaced farm laborers. Computers replaced clerks. The world adjusted, painfully but recognizably. Optimization is different. Optimization does not ask what should be done. It asks what produces the required output with the least cost and risk. And once that question becomes the organizing principle, moral limits begin to dissolve, not because anyone chooses cruelty, but because cruelty becomes a side effect of efficiency. Consider a simple example: customer service. A human agent is expensive, unpredictable, and capable of empathy. Empathy is not always profitable. An automated system is cheaper, scalable, and immune to pleading. It does not get tired. It does not feel shame. It does not break rules just this once. So the organization optimizes. At first, it is framed as convenience, then as modernization, then as necessity. But the real shift is that the human element, the moral friction, is removed from the transaction. The system becomes cleaner, more consistent, and colder. This is the pattern everywhere. Optimization replaces discretion with policy. Policy replaces judgment with procedure. Procedure replaces responsibility with compliance. And compliance becomes a shield. We did not choose this. The system did. Automation makes it possible. Optimization makes it inevitable. Why reskilling keeps failing by design? Now we arrive at one of the most repeated incantations of the era: reskilling. It is spoken as if it were a solution. It is not. Reskilling is a narrative device used to manage a contradiction. A society that cannot employ people but still needs them to believe their exclusion is temporary. If reskilling truly worked at scale, it would produce a visible outcome: stable, mass transitions into newly valuable work. Not a handful of success stories, not a few headline-friendly boot camps, a structural absorption of labor. But that never happens, and it never will, for reasons that are structural, not motivational. First, the number of people displaced is larger than the number of high-leverage roles created. This is not a training gap, it is arithmetic. Second, the roles people are told to reskill into are themselves on a timer. If the target is learn to code, the problem is that code is being automated. If the target is data analysis, the problem is that analysis is being automated. If the target is creative work, the problem is that distribution, monetization, and discovery are being automated and captured. The system does not need millions of newly trained experts. It needs a small number of winners and a large number of strivers, because strivers are politically quiet. Third, reskilling individualizes a collective problem. It reframes structural displacement as personal failure. If you are not surviving, It is not because the economy has no place for you, it is because you did not adapt fast enough. That is why it is always framed as empowerment. In reality, it is a delay mechanism. It buys time. It keeps the displaced busy, hopeful, and self-blaming, while the economic structure continues to narrow. Reskilling fails because it is designed to fail quietly. Surveillance as preventive care. Surveillance is no longer sold as control. It is sold as care. This is one of the most important mechanisms of the coming order. The rebranding of restraint as protection. We are told surveillance prevents crime, prevents extremism, prevents fraud, prevents misinformation, prevents self-harm, prevents the next emergency, prevents the next contagion. And because it is framed as prevention, objection becomes suspicious. If you have nothing to hide, becomes if you oppose this, you must want harm to happen. This is how control becomes virtuous. The crucial shift is that surveillance is moving from investigation to prediction. Not what happened, but what might happen. Not punishment, but risk scoring. Not justice, but management. Once you accept that the role of the system is to prevent bad outcomes, you also accept that the system must monitor you continuously. Because prevention requires early signals. The mechanisms are already familiar, a growing dataset of behavior, a model that detects patterns, a threshold where intervention becomes justified, and a feedback loop that marks the intervened upon as higher risk. It begins with criminals, it expands to suspects, it expands to associates, it expands to categories, and it is always described as reasonable because each expansion is small. Surveillance does not arrive as tyranny, it arrives as insurance. The myth of neutral technology. Finally, we must dismantle one of the most cherished lies in modern discourse: neutrality. People say technology is neutral, that it is just a tool, that it depends on how we use it. This is true in the trivial sense. A hammer can build a house or break a skull. But it is false in the real sense because tools do not exist in a vacuum. They exist inside power structures, and they inherit them automatically. A tool's neutrality ends at the moment it is deployed at scale, because deployment requires infrastructure, capital, access, and authority. The same algorithm in two hands is not the same instrument. When a government deploys a tool, it becomes policy. When a corporation deploys a tool, it becomes incentive. When a monopolist deploys a tool, it becomes environment. And the direction of development is not neutral either. Tools are built to serve whoever pays for them. They are trained on whatever data is available. They are constrained by whatever risks the owner fears. They are optimized to produce whatever outcomes the institution rewards. So the myth of neutrality is not an innocent misunderstanding. It is a permission slip. It allows the powerful to say, "Do not blame us, blame the tool." And it allows the public to say, "This is inevitable. It is just progress." In reality, technology is not destiny. It is governance by other means. Pillar 1 was about thresholds, moments where the structure flips. Pillar 2 is about mechanisms, the quiet processes that carry society across those thresholds without consent, without debate, and often without awareness. Automation is not the threat. Optimization is. Reskilling is not failing. It is functioning as intended. Surveillance is not security. It is preventive control. Technology is not neutral. It inherits the shape of power. And once you see the mechanisms, the future stops looking like science fiction. It starts looking like administration.